What's the significance of Aleister Crowley?
And he's probably one of the most, if not the most influential ceremonial magician of the 20th century. And he was born in 1875 and he died in 1947. And basically he was a genius, another example of sort of the evil genius, you know. He went to Oxford and he was raised by a very, oddly enough, Aleister Crowley is like the nightmare version of the preacher's kid, because he was raised by a very strict Plymouth Brethren family. In fact, his mother, I think, was too strict. And every time he'd misbehave, she'd beat him, and she started saying, "When you grow up, you're going to be the great beast." Now, you know, what kind of a mother would say that to a kid, you know? So by the time he was 18, when he went to Oxford, he baptized a toad in the name of Jesus Christ and crucified it upside down. And he went on, and he was like a poet and a mountaineer and a chess master, and he also ended up joining the Order of the Golden Dawn, which was like the central occult society of the late 19th and early 20th century. And he went from there, he married this poor unfortunate woman, Rose Kelly. I mean, he had like 3 or 4 wives, and all of them ended up either alcoholics or suicides. But he took her on her honeymoon, their honeymoon, to Egypt. And they went and spent their honeymoon night in the king's chamber of the Great Pyramid, where he reported he saw blue light circulating around the room. And later on, Crowley took her to the Cairo Museum just to see some of the exhibits. And for some strange reason, she was drawn to this one exhibit down at the end of the hall, and it was a stele. And a stele in Egyptian lore is like a big kind of thing that's got writing on it. It looks almost like, kind of like the cliche image of the tablets that Moses wrote the 10 Commandments, you know, Yahweh wrote the 10 Commandments on. And he comes down to it, and it happens to be exhibit number 666. And so he felt this is something, you know, like this is a real important, you know, whatever you want to call it, magical coincidence. And so he looked at what this was, and it was the stele of Ankh-Khonsu, who was a priest in some ancient dynasty. And he came to understand at that moment that he was the reincarnation of Ankh-Khonsu. And so he went home that night, and I think over the next few nights, this is in 1904, his wife started going in a trance, and she started giving him this book, which ended up being what is called the Liber Alvel Legis, the Book of the Law. And he thought that he was the new avatar of the new aeon, just like Christ was the beginning of the Christian age, he was the beginning of the Crowleyan age, the new age. And he started a new religion, which he called Crowleyanity. This guy had no problem with self-esteem. And in fact, he used to say that the greatest experience any woman could ever have on the spiritual level would be to have sex with him. So he was a real character. And he basically founded he said the cardinal rule of his religion was, do what thou wilt shall be the whole of the law. Love is the law, love under will. And because of the emphasis on the word will, another name for his religion was the religion of thelema, which is the Greek word for will. So people who follow Crowley are called Thelemites. And essentially, he cast this huge shadow over 20th century magic. Basically, Wicca was based on a lot of his writings, and a lot of the magical work that has been done since the 1950s in America and England and even in Europe, because he ended up, for a long story, but he ended up being made the head of the OTO for the English-speaking world, the Ordo Templi Orientis, which is an occult Templar Rosicrucian society that taught sex magic. And so, you know, he had influence in that area as well. Plus, he was a very high-level Mason. So, you know, he had so many Masonic degrees, he used to joke, he said an elephant would creak under the weight of all the medals and garlands and aprons that I have the right to wear in terms of my Masonic achievements.
And what did you think of him at the time?
Well, we thought he was a very powerful and enlightened being, you know, and we felt that he was kind of, to our century, what Yeshua was to his century. And because a lot of his stuff was very wise, and a lot of it was very hateful. it's one of those paradoxes. And as I think I mentioned earlier, I actually supposedly went into trance and had him speak through me. So we trusted him enough to let that happen. And we, like a lot of the rituals we did were out of his books. We did Gnostic masses. We did the Bornless ritual. We did some of his other rituals. In fact, every day we would do his sun salutations at morning, noon, evening, and midnight. It was like we weren't ever officially Thelemites, even though we did belong to the OTO. But I mean, we were unofficially very much into him.
And what advice would you give to people now who have a curiosity about his writings?
Well, even like when we were in this stuff, a lot of people would write and say, beware of what Crowley writes, because he deliberately does some things backwards just to mess with people's minds. He'll give you magical instruction, like a recipe, how to do this ritual, and he'll deliberately, and we even knew this, and so we'd go to the spirit guides, and the spirit guides would tell us supposedly what was right. But he would deliberately put booby traps in his books. And if you did one wrong thing, it would blow up in your face magically and ended up in a lunatic asylum. So, and a lot of people, see, that was our generation, that kind of came up in the 60s and 70s. And unfortunately, a lot of the people that are messing, because he's no more popular now than he ever was during his life. And a lot of the people who are messing around with Crowley don't understand it. They end up getting demon-possessed to their eyeballs.
The first question America wants to know, are you clean right now?
Look at me, duh. Drug tests don't lie.
When was the last time you did drugs?
Don't remember, don't care. Drug tests don't lie. The scoreboard doesn't lie.
You say you've cured yourself of addiction. You don't need Alcoholics Anonymous. How have you done that?
I closed my eyes and made it so with the power of my mind. I had to unload 22 years of fiction. And just decided that I don't believe that anymore, and I know my own truth, and that's what I stand on right now.
He ended up basically, in his life, a total failure. I mean, he spent the last 2 or 3 years of his life living in this, rented room next to a cemetery in Brighton, living on heroin and boiled eggs. I mean, he was a hopeless heroin addict for the last, third of his life. So even though he believed, he would actually deliberately get himself addicted to heroin because he thought his will, you see again, thelema, will, was strong enough to break free of the drug, but obviously it wasn't.
Here's a song called Mr. Crowley.
I closed my eyes and made it so with the power of my mind.
Because he thought his will, you see again, thelema, will, was strong enough to break free of the drug.
Look at me, duh. Look at me, duh. Look at me, duh. 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 Duh.